So I said to this guy, property rights are left wing. I told him, I said, property rights are a left wing concept. And he didn't believe me, but I told him, I said, look, the fake right, the conservative right, they defend property rights because they're just following the left. They're 25 years behind the left. So they support property rights, but really property rights are the invention of the left wing. And true right-wingers, the real right wing, the deep right, the hardcore right-wingers out there, extreme rightists, you don't believe in property rights, okay? There's no such thing as property. It's a made-up, it's a left-wing concept. You see, in a true right-wing animalistic environment, it's might makes right, and there's no concept of property. Objects simply exist, and subjects exist, and subjects are in constant struggle over the temporary possession of objects. But there's no such thing as true possession, because possession happens on a moment-by-moment basis. So long as the spirit and the soul is willing to fight and struggle, then you temporarily possess this object. But the moment that you cease to have the will and the strength to defend your possession is the moment that you lose it. So there is no property rights. The rights in general, it's a leftist concept. It's a left-wing concept. I mean, this is true, right? This is true. We all understand. Okay, yeah, you're making games here, and this is a gaming channel now. This is a gaming channel. I know I criticize gaming, and I will continue to criticize gaming because that itself is a metagame. It's the game of who can signal the most and who can be above it all and say, you guys are playing a silly, stupid little game. Best comment, by the way. We're getting a lot of good comments. We're getting a lot of terrible comments, some very disgusting comments. But some of the good, oh jeez, we're getting disgusting comments with disgusting responses. We don't want to think about that. But we are getting some good comments, and the comment was about the heat. I have to give credit here. Heat death of the universe. Rattle Grebadron. Any solution that doesn't prevent the heat death of the universe is a waste of time. I love that because it's a good parody. I can laugh at myself. You can laugh at me. It's fine. It's all jokes. It's good. It's a good parody of my mentality, of my pessimism and my forward thinking and my infinite criticism. So being able to criticize me in the same vein that I criticize myself is a very good thing. That's why I like the old Maldoror, because he always took it to that next level. And I'm not willing to go that far, because to me, then it gets monotonous again. You have to have that interplay between this unlimited pessimism, but there's just this little tantric, this or metasexual, you might say, like a metasexual tantric element there. That's like, well, there might be a little bit of hope in thousands of years, or like maybe if we evolve into a different species, we could solve these problems, or something like wild and crazy like that. You just light up your dreams, take some LSD and have some hallucinations about future. Not that I do that. I'm a straight edge kind of guy. But, you could do that. People have done that. John David Ebert's probably done that. So anyway, we're talking about property rights. And we kind of came out with a little bit of Ragnar Redbeard right-wing stuff. And of course, I'm not into that. I'm not into that. I'm a left-wing person. I'm a left-wing person. I'm a left-wing person, so I believe in rights. I believe in property rights. I believe we have to structure society. Because the right-wing person is a traditionalist. They want to return to a time of animalism, a time of right makes white. What words are we using? There's too many rhyming words here that are confused in my brain. Might makes right. That's the little syllogism I'm looking for. So I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. I believe that rights are good. I'm a left-wing person, so I like rights. I like the delineation of society. I was reading a little bit of a story up in Vancouver. There is a little piece of the puzzle coming apart where the TERFs have a little women's shelter, and the trans folk, they have a little counter-protest. And by counter-protest, I mean vandalism and nailing dead rats onto the doorstep. So the word protest, I'm using that kind of loosely here. But they're mad. The trans folk are mad at the TERFs because they have a women's shelter that's women's only, and they're kind of excluding the trans folk, and that's not cool. And the mayor said, well, look, we sympathize with you, but this kind of reaction, this kind of protest is very predictable because you've been excluding the trans folk. So I read something like this, and I'm looking at this phenomenon where the trans folk are trying to completely deconstruct any kind of borders, any kind of boundaries. Gender is a left-wing concept. I don't know what's a better title. I thought it was going to be property rights or left-wing. Property rights and gender are left-wing, though, because they're both delineations, because the left is about delineating. The left is Apollonian. The left is masculine. The left is about delineating. European civilization is the only civilization which has really developed a concept of left versus right. Every other culture in the world has its own distinct culture. I'm not saying they're all the same, but they have their own distinct tradition. And prior to the European colonization of the world, and we could say both the Indo-European expansion several thousand years ago, as well as the more recent Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus type expeditions, both of those are European expansions. And they introduced this element of change and newness. So that's what the left wing is about, change and newness and progress. Well, you can't have change and newness and progress if you don't have a sense of time. You can't have time if you don't have a sense of delineation. And so what the Egyptians create, and what the Babylonians create, and what the Hebrews create, and what the Indo-Europeans create, and this greater western area of northwest Eurasia, or we might just say western Eurasia generally, this cultural zone, hyperpollinates within one another. There's this cross-cultural pollination, and they create the concept of time, and they create the concept of delineation, and they create the concept not just of the past and the ancestors, but they also create a concept of the future. And this is not really something you see in other cultures. In other cultures, you have a sense of the ancestors, the past, and you have a sense that someday we're going to die, and maybe we'll be part of the ancestors or something like this. But there's this infinite sea of tradition that just subsumes everything, and we're just trying to get back to a golden age. And it's not that you don't see this in the West, but I'm saying that in the West, you get the emergence of this left-wing spirit. There is, of course, the right-wing soul, this rootedness in a tradition that we are Chinese, and we're Confucianists, and we respect and venerate our ancestors. We are from India, and we respect the Brahmin, and the Brahmin are at the top, and we respect the caste system. Okay. We're in the Mayan Empire, we're in the Aztecs, with the Inca, we have to respect the ancestors, respect the traditions, make these sacrifices, we have these rituals. With the Hebrews, you see this hyper-ritualization of religion that is then disseminated through the individuals of the religion, each individual member. Each individual member of the Jewish religion is to view himself as a priest unto the nations and to act in accordance with that. And so each individual member in Orthodox Judaism is supposed to daven and pray and put the box on the forehead and put the tefillin around the arm, and all of these practices that are priestly practices, they're ritualistic practices. You think about European Catholics. European Catholics might go on Easter and Christmas or something, or when they were forced to go to Mass, they didn't even understand what was going on. They were just sitting there and waiting, and the ritualism was something that came top down to them rather than something they were individually doing. So this aspect of ritualism and traditionalism, it's something that the left wing doesn't like. JF is a very left-wing guy, and another great title. JF is a left-wing guy because he's a delineator. He calls himself autistic. I think, I don't know if that's a clinical diagnosis that he's received officially from the approved mainstream sources. But really what I think he means there, he's a delineator. And he's very logical, and he doesn't allow his emotions to interfere with his logical analytical assessment. So he's a left-wing thinker. A right-wing thinker is Chthonian. A right-wing thinker is emotional. A right-wing thinker is feminine, not just in the sense of a beautiful, supermodel. Quite the opposite, actually. The true feminine, the true Chthonian is trans. This is the interesting thing about the myth of Tiamat. Tiamat is a goddess dragoness, serpentess. Now, the figure of Tiamat reappears in the Christian Bible in the book of Revelation as the Whore of Babylon. So it is a feminine figure, fundamentally, a she, a female, but who at the same time is a beast. She's part of the beast system, and she's a dragon, and she has this Chthonian element to her. So really what we're describing here is the Apollonian element is androgynous. The Apollonian element is androgynous in the sense that the Apollonian element is neither male nor female. The Apollonian element, in its extreme, there's no reproductive capability. There's no desire for reproduction. It's just complete stasis. The Apollonian element is the supermodel, essentially. The Apollonian element is the delineation of the subject from the object universe, from the background space. And so, a perfect Apollonian image is the Greek statue. The Greek statue is, well, we know that statues were actually painted in the ancient world. But the way that those statues then, you might say through a kind of morphogenetic evolution throughout history, if we're going to go with a, kind of Sheldrakean analysis, we would say that they became these pure white statues that are purely distinguished from the universal space that surrounds them, and they have no interaction with the universal space. A Chthonian, quote-unquote, art would veer more toward interaction with the environment. So you get these art pieces where you are the art piece. You go and you interact with the artist. So these kind of living, breathing, teeming masses, art pieces, quote-unquote, modern art is really just Chthonian art, where you have, oh, look, I took 10,000 bottle caps and put them in a pile and put them on the floor and then put a card in front of them, and that's an art piece. And so that is this Chthonian lack of delineation, lack of purpose. When you just throw Jackson Pollock, you're just throwing paint at the wall. That is Chthonian art. That's right-wing art, because you're returning to this massive tradition of emotion, of femininity, of earthly, you're soul-based. You look at it and you have a visceral reaction. And there's no intelligible mythos. There's no intelligible logos. Logos is left-wing. Well, there's a lot of things that are left-wing. I just love this. This is something, I put on break, I put on hold, I put on pause because people said it's not serious. Well, I don't know. YouTube is not a serious place. If you're looking for something serious, I don't know where you go. Maybe you go to church, maybe you go to a monastery, maybe you go in the woods. Maybe you meditate. I don't know where the serious space is. But YouTube is not a serious space. This is not a serious channel. It's all just a big joke. It's all just a big inside joke. It's a big laugh. So, it's like you're playing a chess game, and the question is, what are you solving? What are you doing? And yet you're just playing chess. You're playing it over and over again. You're just becoming a chess master. This is a chess master channel. We're becoming masters of chess. Not because by becoming masters of chess we're going to save the world, but it's just we like chess. It's a fun game. And again, I criticize game players, but that's part of the game, right? You criticize the other game players just in the same way that the jock says that Dungeons and Dragons is a waste of time, and the nerd says that sports ball is a waste of time. It's just all signaling. It's just all people. We all have our own games, right? So we can all, we can live in this culturally relative space and morally relative, metaphysically relative. We can say we're in a hyper-modern space. We're no longer attacking morality or metaphysics. That was the job of the postmodernists. We're actually saying that there's this cloud, this Chthonian chaotic cloud of metaphysics and morality. It's all just floating out there. And rather than Nietzsche saying you can just create your own morality, you're actually just gonna pluck out whatever appeals to you, whatever's advertised to you, whatever feels good. You're just gonna pluck it out, and you're going to pursue that path, that little course there. And you have in the one sense, you can imagine you have this total free will. But on the other sense, you're almost controlled by your passions, right? You're controlled by what you want. There's an infinite variety of choice. You can just pluck out whatever you want, and therefore, in a sense, your path is predetermined. So all kinds of interesting things, dilemmas we're bringing up here. But to get back to the left-wing thing, gender is left-wing, property rights are left-wing, classical art is left-wing, JF is left-wing. I might be forgetting some here. There's a lot of left-wing stuff. The right-wingers are all about this modern art and this Chthonian mass man, what Nietzsche called the last man. Are we talking about Jackson Pollock or not Woody Allen? The guy who did the art as cans of Campbell soup And he got, Valerie Solaris, Andy Warhol, right? Andy Warhol, was he like Finnish? What was up with Andy Warhol? Why does he look like a weird guy? Was he Finnish or something? Was he from Finland? No, was he like Polish? Apparently he's from like Poland or something. I just look at him and I was reminded of that famous director weird guy hair. If I search director weird guy hair, am I gonna get the guy? Am I gonna get the guy if I search director weird guy hair? Or am I gonna have to search director Finnish music? Is that gonna, shout out if you know who I'm talking about. He's Finnish American director. Let's see if that pops it up. Okay, films. David Lynch. I'm sorry, David Lynch. I forgot your name. So David Lynch, obviously we know a lot of facts, important facts about David Lynch. His hair is just amazing, by the way. This guy, some of these photographs of this guy, he has, it's quite actually amazing. He has like this mohawk vibe, but it's actually, it's not quite the mohawk. When he looks young, he looks a lot more boring. When he looks older, he gets wild. The dude gets wild. He's an inspiration to us all. So we've got David Lynch, we've got Andy Warhol. I thought there might be some connection between the two guys, but apparently that's not necessarily the case. Yeah, David Lynch is definitely Finnish, 100%. But Andy Warhol, he's Polish, apparently. So that's a little digression there. But yeah, the consumer society, mercantilism, the product, quantity over quality, the mass-produced Ford automotive, interchangeable parts. This is all the right wing. This is all the right wing, guys. And having a system of delineation, two separate genders, the internal world, the external world, the private life, the public life, the sphere of government, the sphere of commerce, the sphere of the secular, the sphere of the religious. These are all left-wing concepts. The right wing just wants to jumble everything together into 618 commandments that you just have to follow unquestioningly their authority because it's traditional and it's what we've always done. That is the right wing. The right wing throws you into, an ancient Aztec empire, and they're just kidnapping, prepubescent girls and cutting them open and eating their hearts and whatever. And you're like, why are they doing this? And you're like, well, it's the will of the gods. The will of the gods. You can't question the will of the gods. That's the right-wing way. The right-wing way is like, we have a mass society. Everyone acts the same. We have a consumer society. No one questions it. Everything's mixed together. You can just call yourself a woman and then gain access to a woman's shelter. There's no such thing as category. There's no such thing as delineation. And it's interesting because a while ago, I would say maybe a year ago or something, the big hot thing I was learning about was nominalism. And I thought at the time, I was like, this is the key to everything, this nominalism, where you reject the idea of categories. You say there's no such thing as redness. There's no such thing as blueness. Where every object is infinitely unique. It's an infinitely unique creation. And we can't get into this essentialism where like redness exists abstractly as like a metaphysical principle, or blueness or whiteness. No, these ideas don't exist. Idealism is false. Nominalism is correct. Nominalism is the idea that everything exists, as these discrete little entities completely separate from one another. And, nominalism, they tried to trace it back. I was listening to Ivan the Heathen, and he was trying to trace it back to, like, scholasticism in the 12th century or whatever was going on. And I kind of look at that, and I'm like, in a sense, nominalism is this panpsychism. It's this pantheism that you're looking at everything as radically separate. And because there's no unifying principle of anything, everything is unified. So we can't say like there's such a thing as red colors and blue colors. Everything is just infinitely unique. And because we're all infinitely unique, We're all infinitely indistinguishable in a way. It's just a mass chaotic scene. You can't delineate. You can't categorize. You can't use heuristics, which is, of course, what science is about. Science is about cutting up reality, making sense of reality, making theories, hypotheses, a hypothesis, if you will. You're creating different categories. You know, Carl Linnaeus, and you have your taxonomy, and you have your binomial nomenclature. I mean, even that term, binomial, two names, nomenclature. It's like this cutting. You're separating the heavens from the earth, and the greater from the lesser, and the light from the dark. That's left wing. That's what the God of Genesis does. But the right wing wants to confuse everything and morph everything together and create a color continuum where you can't point to any dot on the map and say this is a distinct color region. It's like, no, red doesn't exist, blue doesn't exist, they're all just blended together. We can't have categories. There's no such thing as a man and a woman, it's just however you're feeling that day. Categories don't exist, but at the same time they're infinitely divisible. And we have to accept and respect someone who says, you know, whatever title they come up for themselves, we have to accept that as legitimate and equal to any other, any other title. Now, the interesting thing is that the leftism in the West constitutes in itself a tradition in the sense that leftism is ingrained now into the culture. And so when we think about the words like male and female as gendered terms, these are delineations. But at the same time, they're delineations we've had for a while. And so there's this kind of confusion where people think the defense of gender is a right-wing thing because you're defending tradition. But in a metaphysical sense, defending gender is a left-wing thing, and attacking gender and claiming there's this infinite gender spectrum is actually a right-wing thing. And so, it's interesting because if we put it like that, if we say we're headed in a right-wing direction, where race is deconstructed, sex is deconstructed, all these things are delineations are deconstructed, then we get to a place where we say, really, we're becoming more right-wing as a society. We're becoming more quantitative rather than qualitative. We're becoming more insectoid rather than personal and Apollonian and archetypal or archetypal. I don't know what the word is. We're moving in this direction. So in a sense, we're becoming more right-wing and less left-wing. And so when I'm a left-winger saying that, I'm like, no, let's move back into the past where we are more left-wing. But then people perceive that to be traditionalism and conservatism, which it is with respect to like time and teleology and just the chronology of events. But with respect to like the metaphysical analysis of these concepts, if we use this term delineation, we say that's the left. The left is about separation, separatio. The left is about segregation. The left says, this is my house, I can be in it, and I'm segregated from the rest of society. No one's allowed to come in here. This is my business. I can allow in whatever patrons I want. I have freedom of association. The right to freedom of association is a left-wing concept. The idea that anyone can walk into your business doesn't matter who they are, and you're forced to serve them. The idea that anyone can walk into your house. The idea that men can go into a women's shelter. The idea that gender doesn't exist. Because male spaces and female spaces shouldn't exist, and everyone should just freely intermix in an orgy. That is a right-wing concept. That is what you see in these quote-unquote, I don't know what the non-offensive politically correct term is, but I guess these non-Western societies, non-technological societies, where there is no concept of monogamy, and there is no concept of separation, and everyone's just sort of doing it with everybody. That is a right-wing society. That is a close-to-nature society. That's an animalistic society. Animals just do whatever they want with anybody. And this is this interesting argument that people make against sexual liberation is they say, that's the left wing. And, the natural thing is to have male and female heterosexuals. I think about it in the opposite way. I think that the animal kingdom is full of all kinds of, crazy stuff and out there stuff, and everyone's mixing with everybody. And it's a Ragnar Redbeard kind of might makes right world. The animals are kind of sexually liberated. They do it with whatever, whenever. You get dogs and they're on your leg and you can't stop them. So it's crazy out there. And that to me is right wing. To me, the right wing is about being animalistic. To me, the right wing is about following your passion. To me, the right wing is about the insectoid world of quantity. And the left-wing world is about creating delineation, creating the concept of the personality, creating the concept that you have an individual spirit or even an individual soul as opposed to like a world soul. But creating these delineations, conceiving of the difference between heaven and earth, past and present, fantasy and reality. Primitive peoples or aboriginal peoples with their concept of magical time and magical space and the magical dream, the waking dream, the dreaming world, they don't differentiate between hallucination and reality. The left wing comes and it cuts away, that says, no, we're going to have that which is real and that which is false, that which is a dream and that which is waking. And that continues with things like the Enlightenment and French Revolution. And so, it's interesting, another left-wing person is those people, those Doolittle people, and they're left-wing. But the thing, they're so left-wing that they have to say, like, they give this term Abrahamism to anything which they perceive as like mystical and right-wing. Of course, they're using the terms in opposite senses. They're saying, oh, we're on the right and those people are on the left. Because I have my own kooky little dichotomy here that inverts everything. But they're looking at that and I'm like, wait a second here. If we're looking at humanity as a whole, these quote-unquote Abrahamists, they're differentiating. They differentiate between the dairy and the meat. They differentiate between the cotton and the linen. They differentiate between the male and the female. They differentiate between, when you can eat, when you can't eat, when is the Sabbath, when is not the Sabbath. Everything's delineated in that culture. So you can't say it's a non-delineated culture. It's obviously much more similar to the Indo-European tradition than, the Australian Aboriginals or even, these extreme form of traditionalism that you see in these petrified societies that don't have change. So obviously a petrification took place in the evolution of that culture, which had many different exterior cultural influences brought upon it. That's within the myth of the 12 tribes. 12 tribes already, you're saying, this is a mass of people with 12 different origins, 12 different personality types, 12 distinct groups within it, 12 different influences. And you can look at all the Indo-European tribes and all the Babylonians and the Egyptians and all the different people who are influencing that cultural area. And you see where that kind of myth of the 12 tribes might come from. So obviously it's a confused and muddled soup, and there's radically different elements within it and different sects of it which have been preserved to this day. But ultimately, I guess people can argue about that. Okay, well, in ancient times, things were like this, and in the present day, things are like that. And I mean, if someone wants to tell me there's a group of people who are forcing right-wing virtues on the world, and they're saying everyone needs to be the same, but at the same time, everyone's radically individualistic, everyone's a special snowflake, but at the same time, everyone has equal rights. And they're playing this game, which it really is just typified by the trans folk. If they're playing that game, but then for themselves, they're being very left-wing and delineated, living in a gated community, and they have their own separate ethno-state, then I would say, okay, well, clearly they're pushing right-wing virtues and values on the masses, but internally within their own community, they act very left-wing. Therefore, they're within this left-wing tradition. You may not like it. You may be angry at them. You may say, oh, you're hypocrites, and that you don't apply your morality consistently. But isn't that even more left-wing? Isn't it even more left-wing to say, we practice left-wing ethics internally, but we push right-wing ethics on everybody else? Isn't that kind of supremely left-wing in a way? So there's levels to this. You have to, and I like playing with these words because people are so, they almost get angry. Like after a certain point, you hear the word left-wing, or you hear the word right-wing, and there are people who are like, they see the image of Donald Trump and they get angry because they're like, I hate right-wingers. And then people who see Hillary Clinton and they get angry because they hate left-wingers. And you want to remain mentally plastic, especially in these times. The idea that you're going to slot yourself again into these delineated spaces. Now that I've gone through all this, I'm actually seeing all the ways that I'm right-wing. All the senses that the times are right-wing, and you kind of have to go with that right-wing current. So I tried to come out defending myself as left-wing, but I find myself moving in this rightward direction with society. which is really interesting. So there has been some development. There have been some shifts since we started playing around with this concept of left and right, where I stand on that. But clearly there's something going on here. And we could continue with this. But we're making shorter videos. Everybody likes the shorter video. You know, games are only fun for so long. You play a chess game for 30 minutes. It's a fun game. You play a chess game for 5 hours. It's not a fun game anymore. So we're going to stop it there. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.